tag looked like it belonged to a suitcase that had learned more about people than places. Heavy canvas, stitched edges, brass grommet. On one side, a bright block of color that could be seen across a room. On the other, 4 rules in clean print and a QR code that remembered more than it asked. Rules: reserve 1 seat for someone who hasn't arrived yet. Log where, when, and why the seat mattered. Leave a small kindness. Move the tag to a new city within a week. Avery found it looped around the back of a chair in a Brooklyn diner that knew how to pour coffee without an apology. The morning was rain-polished, the windows steamed, and the tag's red face made the chrome fixtures look shy. The seat carrying it stayed empty through the breakfast rush, and still the room behaved as if the person it was saving would be there any second. The staff kept the cup warm. Strangers adjusted their bags to make a clear path to a chair that had already decided to be useful. Avery took her time with the QR code. The ledger that opened felt like a traveling guest book for ordinary decisions. Portland, Corner Cafe, Tuesday, 7:40 a.m. Seat saved for a student who needed to cry into a muffin without paying rent on shame. Kindness, headphones wipe, and a transit day pass. Atlanta, ramen shop, Thursday lunch. Seat saved for a nurse on turnaround. Chopsticks set early. Kindness, cough drops, and a list of late-night groceries that actually care. Minneapolis, bus stop bench, snow in the forecast. Seat became a spot on the curb under a red umbrella. Kindness, hand warmers, and a pocket card for shelters that answer. The tag had been started in Seattle by someone who signed entries with a short line and a sketch of a chair that always leaned slightly left. The tone of those first logs had more calibration than instructions. It did not issue orders, it tuned rooms. Avery worked in food service on the side and nonprofit logistics for a living. She liked schedules that could survive reality and rooms that remembered how to be kind even when receipts didn't. The tag's job was the kind of job she trusted. Small, concrete, repeatable. She slipped the loop off the diner chair only after adding her name to the check with a tip that thanked the seat for doing work that didn't show up on payroll. She logged the entry. Brooklyn, early, rain. Chair held space for a stranger who might be me next week. Kindness. A roll of quarters for the laundromat 2 blocks east, taped under the counter with directions. The tag left the borough by bus in a tote bag that had done heavier lifts. It reappeared in the ledger at Union Station in D.C., where she clipped it to a cafe chair in view of the Amtrak board and watched the crowd change their route a little to make room for the idea of arrival. A woman in a neat navy suit used the seat without noticing the tag and left a thank you that made sense anyway. A sealed pack of tissues and a peppermint with more morale than mint. The ledger moved like weather. Denver posted a photo of the tag tied to a picnic table near a food truck that sold grilled peaches in August. The entry listed the kindness as a laminated map titled, "Restrooms Not Terrible, Walking Directions." Albuquerque logged a spare seat at a long table in a cafeteria where a security guard had quietly looked away so a family could sit together out of the draft. Jacksonville tied the tag to a bleacher spot on a community field and added a kindness of sunscreen and a little bag of dog treats for a spectator named Maple. The sketch of the chair kept appearing. Same left tilt, same sensible lines, always at the edges of the ledger, like someone making sure the room had what it needed. A few entries signed with a tiny paint smear in the corner, as if a brush had learned to carry a signature without letters. Avery recognized the paint before the person. She noticed it first on a sandwich board outside a Queens pop-up. Block letters that made the street believe in itself for a weekend. Color that refused to apologize to gray. The caption attached to the tag that day read, "Seat reserved at a folding table near the door, so nobody has to choose between food and a draft." Kindness. A strip of painter's tape pre-tabbed for easy pulls, and a note for the next pop-up. Right price is big enough for tired eyes. The tag didn't make speeches, it made schedules. A pattern emerged in the ledger. First Wednesdays, early evening, public places that could handle a handful of people being unremarkably generous. Avery started showing up in different cities for work and using first Wednesdays like a compass. In St. Louis, she clipped the tag to a chair in a library atrium, and left a small stack of printed cards listing quiet corners with reliable outlets. In San Diego, she tied it to a boardwalk bench and logged the best hour for shade. In Boston, she clipped it to a bar stool at a counter that had a short side for solo diners and left a page of kind phrases for hosts on a wait list. The Ledger's left-leaning chair sketch caught up with her at a night market under the Manhattan Bridge. A man in paint-splattered black set down a tote of brushes, anchored the tag to an extra stool at his sign painting booth, and behaved like someone who had practiced generosity enough that it no longer performed. He didn't need the tag to prove anything, and used it anyway because rituals keep rooms from forgetting themselves. Avery used the spare stool to rest, log the moment, and notice details that made a person legible without introductions. The careful way he matched stroke widths on two parts of a letter that most people would never notice. The habit of taping his own roll of blue tape into little flags so strangers could use it without swearing. A bandage on his thumb placed with the competence of someone who has learned to be their own first responder. The sketch in the ledger from that day had a little extra weight on the back left leg of the chair, as if a human had leaned into it and the lines had agreed to help. She didn't build a story out loud. She built a calendar that would make overlap a reasonable accident. The tag was going to Dallas for a week. She had training in Austin and could stand a layover with tacos and a borrowed seat. The ledger made introductions at human speed. In Dallas, the chair clip held a place at a long communal table in a PHO shop and a kindness of 2 cough drops and a quiet list of things people can ask for without explaining. In Austin, the tag appeared at a breakfast counter that believed in pancakes without ceremony. The entry listed the kindness as a Sharpie-lettered sign that read, "This seat is for whoever needs it next. Take it forward." The breakup in Avery's own life arrived as a reasonable email explaining 2 incompatible visions of time. There were no villains, only arithmetic. She read it in a Houston airport and set the tag on the empty seat beside her for no one in particular. A child slept with their head in a parent's lap 2 chairs down. The gate agent learned a new story about patience. Avery updated the ledger with a line that had more weather than confession. Seat held for a person who isn't mine anymore. Kindness. A pack of gum for the anxious ears in row 23, and a note about the quietest restroom near gate 34. The tag built habits in more cities than hers. The ledger filled with instructions that were really invitations. Say the name on the cup without making the person spell it twice. Offer water before a question at a service counter. Write down the good benches. People posted photos of the tag clipped to ferry seats in Puget Sound, amusement park benches in Orlando, bleachers under a minor league sky in Durham, where scorekeepers use pencils without apology. The chair sketch never commanded the room. It appeared in margins like a nod. The person behind the sketch finally acquired a name by accident. A pop-up in Philadelphia posted a behind-the-scenes shot of a hand-lettered menu drying on racks. A paint tin sat open on a table with a taped label reading Cal Ortega. Don't mess with the red, a warning and a joke. The ledger entry that day matched the hand and the tilt. The kindness left was a strip of sandpaper clipped to the tag with the note for the next rough edge. From then on, the room had a label to attach to the sketch if it wanted one. Avery didn't race to use it. She liked the nameless version of usefulness that made cities easier to stand inside. She liked the rule more than the story. She kept moving the tag and showing up on first Wednesdays without turning the ledger into a romance table of contents. They overlapped anyway. In Phoenix, first Wednesday landed during a heat wave. The tag's kindnesses grew practical and unpretty. A list of public buildings with AC that didn't require purchase, a handful of paper fans, a spray bottle labeled for wrists, not faces. Cal's entry that week included a hand-drawn diagram of shade at different hours around the plaza and a note about which side of the fountain cooled fastest. Avery added a reminder to freeze water bottles half full the night before. To her surprise, the ledger logged a spike in freezer photos that looked like tiny courage. In Chicago, first Wednesday ran into a summer storm. A folding table under a viaduct became a kindness station without anyone agreeing in advance. The tag reserved a seat that moved. A milk crate turned sideways. A stool borrowed from a vendor who understood. While Cal taped down cords and shook rain off a signboard that refused to blur. Avery passed out plastic bags for damp books, and wrote down the 3 best dry corners within 2 blocks. The ledger's photo captured a moment that belonged to nobody and everybody: glistening concrete, a paper cup held in a steady hand, a chair tag shining red beside a squeegee. The caption read like instruction, disguised as relief. When weather is loud, let the furniture do the thinking. They were careful with each other in the way people are when a project matters more than a performance. Emails about chair clips and ink colors turned into notes about flights and markets without admitting what else they carried. First Wednesdays kept doing most of the work. The seat stayed open in whatever room needed it. People kept taking it forward. The conflict that arrived next was the kind that refuses villains. Cal was offered a months-long mural commission in Detroit that would require losing First Wednesdays in person and trusting strangers with his half of the system. Avery's nonprofit asked her to build a program in San Diego that would start in spring, but require being there to make the budget believe. The ledger already had sister tags in other cities, copycats without paperwork, which meant success. But giving up the pleasure of tuning a room with the founder's hands attached felt like asking a song to keep tempo without the drummer. They solved it the way the tag had taught them, by standing in a doorway and choosing the next room on purpose. The ledger's entry from their last shared First Wednesday for a while listed 2 kindnesses that looked like logistics and read like vows. Avery left a printable toolkit called How to Host a Spare Seat in 4 steps short enough for a tired person to say yes to. Cal left a PDF of 3 lettering templates sized for tag backs and a short note inside the file that said, if this keeps moving, it doesn't belong to us anymore. Detroit learned the rule in 4 days. San Diego took 6. The tag appeared on a Little Italy patio with a paper band around the back that read, "Seat waits 5. After that, it travels." The ledger started reading like a network more than a diary. Kansas City made a version with a barbecue-stained canvas strip that worked better than it should have. Providence kept theirs at a library lucky day shelf with a printed list of quiet chairs on rainy afternoons. The sketch of the left-leaning chair kept showing up in margins once a month like a postcard. The reunion wasn't grand. It felt like something the tag would recognize. Los Angeles in late fall, First Wednesday lining up with the community center's unwedding dance, a room where people toasted who they had become and teenagers earned their sound check stripes. Folding chairs learned their grid. The tag reserved 2 stools at a high top near the punch. The kindness was a sign taped at eye level that read, "You are not late." The room waited. The ledger entry that night carried 2 signatures in familiar shorthand: the sketch of the chair and a small square with a crosshatch Avery used when a schedule had gone right. They didn't turn the story into a speech. They made a rule instead: spare seat hours on First Wednesdays, wherever either of them happened to be, with a 30-minute overlap across time zones if clocks insisted on being difficult. They kept the ending open enough to be useful, which was to say they avoided an ending at all. By winter, the tag's canvas had softened the way good tools do. The brass grommet had a nick that meant it had been useful in rooms where people didn't own grommet tools. The ledger continued to behave like a citywide nervous system for micro-kindness. New Orleans. Seat saved at a second-line stop so a trombone could rest without losing space. Kindness, valve oil, and a map to water that didn't taste like a dare. Boise. Seat at a library story time for the grandparent who reads with a finger under each word. Kindness. 2 bus day passes tucked into a book called Patience. Some love stories blow out candles and centerpieces. This one built a habit and let a room carry the weight. If a red tag with rules and a QR code finds you at a counter, a bench, a bleacher, or a bar stool, clip it to the back of a seat and let everyone else do their part. Log where, when, and why it mattered. Leave something small enough to fit in a hand and big enough to change a day by half an inch. Then move the tag along within a week. And when you see the left-leaning chair sketched in the margin, consider it a nod from a person who trusts you with a system more than a story. And if you arrive to find the spare seat empty and waiting, take it without apology. The room already made space. You're the reason it did.